Welcome to Bear With Us, the podcast where two women bravely explore the High Line.
One charming town and quirky event at a time.
We're here for the people, the stories, and the small moments that make this place special.
And don't worry, zero bears.
Probably.
Welcome back to Bear With Us, the podcast from Bear Paw Development, where we share the people, places, and projects that make North Central Montana so special. I'm Sara.
And I'm Julea. Today's episode is a little bit different. We're leaning into the spooky side of the High Line just in time for October. Woo! From haunted buildings to eerie encounters, we've got some stories to share that might just give you goosebumps.
And joining us for this haunted tour of the High Line is Stephanie Larson, Community Development Specialist here at Bear Paw Development. Stephanie brings a lot of expertise to our team, but today she's here in another role as our resident skeptic.
That's right. While Sara and I share creepy tales because we love creepy tales and to be spooked, Stephanie will let us know if she's truly spooked or if she's just rolling her eyes the whole time.
Stephanie, we're so glad you could join us. Welcome to Bear With Us.
Thank you.
Are you so ready to get spooked?
No, I'm not.
I'm ready.
Steph hates this. Okay, so to kick things off, here's a question that we love to ask on the podcast. So, Stephanie, what kind of bear would be the scariest? A teddy bear that came alive or a ghost grizzly bear?
I very much hope I'm never in that situation, but I'm going to go with the ghost grizzly bear.
Ooh, I like it. Why?
I think I'd be more scared of the teddy bear that comes alive. I don't think I could ever face a teddy bear ever again.
That's fair. It's too Chucky-like.
Yes.
That's totally fair.
Oh, goodness.
Okay, well, we have a couple of stories that we want to tell you today. I think we can just jump right in.
Well, and just to preface, all of these stories are relevant to not necessarily the Bear Paw region. There's one, maybe two, one that's on the outskirts and one that's just beyond our region, but everything else is within our region.
Oh, great. I'm never going to.
So you're going to encounter these in real life.
Or again.
And the first one, Julea is going to present. So kick it off.
I present to you the Black Horse Lake Hitchhiker. If you've ever driven Highway 87 at night between Fort Benton and Great Falls, you know how empty the road can feel. It's just you, the hum of tires, and miles of dark prairie. But that stretch of highway has a legend, a ghost story that locals call the Black Horse Lake Hitchhiker. They say the figure always looks the same, a Native American man with long black hair dressed in denim. Sometimes it's a jacket, sometimes overalls. He doesn't look out of place, just like a man stranded on the roadside. But if you see him, you'd better hold your breath. It was late October, just after midnight, when a man named Kyle was driving home to Great Falls from visiting his parents in Fort Benton. The road was quiet, the sky was clear, and he was the only car out on Highway 87 that night. As he came around the bend near Black Horse Lake, he saw someone standing by the shoulder. A man, tall, with long dark hair, wearing jeans and what looked like a denim jacket. Kyle slowed a bit, thinking maybe the guy needed help, but before he could react, boom! The man leapt forward and landed hard on the hood of the car. The sound was sickening. The crunch of metal as the hood collided against the man's body, the sharp crack of glass as the figure rolled across the windshield, arms out, face pressed against the clear surface, for just a split second. Kyle swore he saw his eyes, dark and hollow, staring straight into his. Then the figure vanished over the side of the car. Kyle slammed on the brakes, heart racing, convinced he had just killed this man. How was he going to explain this to his parents? The police? Who would believe that this guy purposefully threw himself at a moving car? Shaking, Kyle threw the car in park and jumped out. Cell phone in hand, ready to dial 911, Kyle frantically ran to where the man should be, where he saw him fall. He braced himself for the gruesome scene, but there was nothing. No man, no blood, nothing. The road was empty. There was no one lying on the pavement, no one running away into the fields. Everything was perfectly still. When he turned back towards his car, his stomach dropped. The hood was spotless, no dents, no scratches, not even a smudge on the glass. It was as if nothing had happened at all. Kyle stood there dumbfounded, the lights of his car staring back at him. What had just happened? a car's headlights appeared behind him, pulling over. A woman leaned out at the window calling, "Are you okay? Do you need help?" "Yeah, no, I'm fine," Kyle said, forcing his voice steady. The woman nodded, though she seemed unconvinced, and she started to drive off. Kyle watched as she pulled back onto the highway, and then he froze. In the back seat sat a man. The same hollow eyes, the same denim jacket, the same presence of the figure he thought he had hit. The car disappeared into the night, and Kyle's stomach dropped. He didn't know what he had seen, or if it had even been real. Later, locals would tell of the Black Horse Lake hitchhiker. Some say he's the spirit of a man who was killed on that highway years ago. Others say he's a warning to drivers not to get too comfortable on the long, lonely road. But Kyle didn't know that then. He only knew one thing. He'd seen something no one should see, and it's still out there.
Ooh. Who is this Kyle?
He's a really good friend of mine.
I've heard of this story, though. I've heard of like this hitchhiker
Yeah.
situation.
Like I grew up in Havre, so we've had many a times on Highway 87 when it's been very late, and there is a lot of hitchhikers on that road.
There
So
are.
this is my maybe this could be. I don't know.
If you pick this guy up, he'll drive with you for a while and then just disappear out of the back of your car.
Reason number 843 not to pick up a hitchhiker.
Yes.
It'd be a hard no.
I didn't even need one reason.
Right? Reason number 1 is it's picking up a hitchhiker.
Well, it sounds like this hitchhiker's just gonna jump in.
Yeah, literally.
Goodness.
Well, Sarah has our next story.
Well, I think you need to tell us if you're scared by this or not.
Yeah, I mean it is. I'm not gonna be driving to Great Falls by myself for a while.
Oh no.
All right. Are you ready for the next scary story? Havre, Montana sits on the High Line in the windswept plains of north central Montana. It's a town built on railroad history and the grit of people who've worked hard to make this place their home. And right in the heart of town is Havre High School, part of Havre Public Schools, where generations of blue ponies have passed through its halls.
Know where you're going with this.
The current building, often called the New High School in local writing, has stood long enough now to gather not just memories, but legends. Over the decades, additions have been built, repairs made, and countless hours spent by students, teachers, and staff. People working late into the night, custodians finishing their rounds, secretaries catching up on paperwork. And it's in those quiet, empty hours that the stories begin. Because Havre High is said to have a ghost. They call him Oscar. Now, Oscar isn't known as a terrifying spirit. He's described as mischievous, even friendly in his way. The legend paints him as a maintenance worker from long ago. One version of the story says Oscar met his end in the auditorium, falling from the high catwalk, his life cut short in a tragic accident. Whether that's exactly what happened or not, no one can say for sure. The records don't spell it out. But the story has stuck, and so has Oscar. For decades, staff at Havre High have shared their encounters. Doors opening or slamming on their own, locked gates that suddenly swing free, lights that flicker or turn on without a switch being touched. Custodians, especially those working alone at night, tell of the gym, the echo of basketballs dribbling, the unmistakable rhythm of a game being played. But when they open the door to look, the court is empty, silent. Others hear footsteps in the hall, or the sound of someone clearing their throat just over their shoulder. One principal secretary said it happened to her several times while she worked in an otherwise empty office. She'd spin around, certain someone was standing there, but the space was bare. And then there are the things that move. A paperclip sailing across the desk, pictures falling to the ground, even when they were screwed firmly into the wall. Loud noises that send people running to check, only to find nothing disturbed. One story that's often retold is from the late 1990s, when a young English teacher stayed late to grade papers in her classroom. It was nearly midnight, and the building was silent. She later said she heard footsteps coming from down the hall. Measured, heavy, like work boots striking the tile. At first, she thought it was the night custodian, but when she stepped into the doorway to wave, the hallway stretched empty in both directions. Shrugging it off, she went back to her desk, only to hear a sudden scraping sound, the unmistakable drag of a chair across the tile floor of her classroom. But none of her chairs had moved. She gathered her things in a hurry, heading for the stairwell. That's when she saw it, just for a second, at the far end of the hall. A tall man in coveralls standing in front of the trophy case. He raised a hand as if to tip his cap, then simply faded into the dim light. She said her skin prickled with cold, the air turned heavy around her, and she hurried out to her car without looking back. When she told her colleagues the next morning, they just nodded knowingly. Sounds like Oscar, one said. He likes to check in on new teachers. These stories share a pattern. Oscar seems most active when the school is otherwise quiet. Summer breaks, evenings, time when the usual bustle of students and teachers has faded away. He doesn't bother kids in class, doesn't cause harm. He just plays tricks. He teases. It's the kind of haunting that feels more like someone reminding the living, I'm still here, don't forget me. But who was Oscar really? That's where the mystery deepens. No record has been found of a maintenance man named Oscar dying in such an accident. No obituary, no official report. The earliest written stories about him only go back a couple of decades. The details differ depending on who tells them. Was it really the auditorium catwalk or somewhere else? Did Oscar once work here, or is his name just something that grew in the retelling? Like all good folklore, the truth may be less important than the story itself. Oscar has become part of Havre High's identity, part of the whispered history that doesn't show up in yearbooks or official records. He's the reason you don't linger too long in the hallways after everyone's gone home. He's the explanation when a door slams without warning or when footsteps echo in an empty corridor. So the next time you find yourself in Havre High after dark and you hear the faint thump, thump, thump of a basketball in the gym, or the sound of a man clearing his throat right behind you, don't be afraid. It's probably just Oscar, still keeping watch over the school he never left.
Okay, so here's where my skepticism comes in. My mom taught at Havre High for 32 years. And I grew up in that building. I was there roaming the halls by myself. It was pitch black. Never did I see Oscar. Why would he not come say hi to me? Why would he
So
not come scare me?
you're going to hate this
Oh,
because I too grew up in the high school, but I grew up in the theater.
you have?
I have seen Oscar and I
No.
have heard Oscar. And Sarah's right. There's no actual record that he was like an actual janitor there, but that theater is haunted. That theater is crazy. Okay, so my mother, one time she was in there by herself. My mother was the theater director for a while, and she was in there doing the set by herself. And all of a sudden, the costume closet door opened and slammed shut. And she said, "Okay, I'm sorry, I will go." And she left. That theater's been blessed.
What?
Literally, I'm not joking. It literally has been.
Like it had an exorcism of sorts?
Basically, yeah. And so for a while, it was a little bit better, and it's bad again. When I was in high school, we played with a Ouija board in the
Oh,
theater.
no. Oh,
No,
no.
okay, so I never believed in Ouija boards. My parents were like, "Never play with them," and I was like, "That's stupid." So my friend brought a Ouija board to school, and he's like, "Let's take it in the theater." And we were like, "Yeah, sounds great. Let's do that." And so my friend and another friend and myself put our hands on the planchette and we asked a question. It started to move. And I was like, "No, okay, I'm done." Said goodbye. And I was like, "I'm leaving. I'm not comfortable with this." So me and my best friend left the theater and we walked just kind of down the hall and around. And then we were going to go back in the theater, but the front doors of the theater were locked. So we had to go around to the side. We went in and we were like, "Hey guys, what's up?" And they're like, "Ha ha ha, very funny." And we were like, "What are you talking about?" And they're like, "You guys think you're just so funny, don't you?" And we're like, "We legitimately do not know what you're talking about." They said they were playing with the Ouija board, asking questions when they heard the front theater doors like shaking, like being completely shaken like they were completely locked, but someone was trying to get in, and then they heard people running down the aisles. It was not us. Like, yeah. So it's 100% haunted.
The gym's kinda creepy too. When
The
I was
gym is
coaching
really
volleyball,
creepy.
when we'd get in late and I'd have to take Steph back, and I would, like, hurry. And I never saw anything, I never heard anything, but it's just that, like, uneasy feeling of, like,
Yeah.
I think someone's here."
Maybe they just liked you and they were like, "Oh, she doesn't wanna be scared."
Well, here's another, like, clue for the story. I Is there a trophy case on the 2nd floor where the English teachers would be?
There's a trophy case, by the main office, isn't there?
There's a couple
There's a
trophy
few of 'em.
cases. All the
Well,
English classes
were
are
they
on the
in the
2nd floor
90s?
now. I don't know. Have they always been on the 2nd floor? Oh, that's crazy.
Well, way to dissect my story,
I just
Sarah.
had to. This is what skeptics do. You're welcome.
Move on to the next one.
Our next one is called, and please forgive me for my pronunciation, The Legend of the Shunka Warak'in. Are you ready?
I'm ready. I haven't heard this yet. I'm excited.
This is a cryptid story. On the plains of Montana, long before cars and highways, people spoke of a creature that haunted the night. They call it the Shunka Warak'in, which roughly means the one who carries off dogs. Descriptions vary, but most agree that it looks something between a wolf and a hyena. Low to the ground, long body, dark shaggy fur, and glowing eyes that shine red in the dark. Its cry is said to be unlike any animal you've ever heard, a cross between a howl and a sinister laugh. The stories go back centuries. Families on the frontier claimed that their dogs would vanish in the night, snatched from right outside their cabins. Tracks would be found in the dirt, larger than a wolf's, but with an odd, twisted shape. Livestock would be spooked, horses would refuse to move forward, and people swore they heard the beast circling their homes in the dark. In the 1880s, a rancher in Madison Valley reportedly shot one of the creatures. Instead of burying it, he had it mounted by a taxidermist. That mount still exists. Locals call it ringducus, and it's been displayed at different times in Montana museums. When you look at it, it doesn't quite match any animal known to science. I haven't seen this, but I did see a few pictures. It's a little creepy. But the sightings didn't stop, even into modern times. Back in the 1970s, a rancher named Bill lived on a spread at the edge of the Bear Paw Mountains. Bill was the kind man who didn't scare easy. He'd face down blizzards, wildfires, and wolves in the lambing shed. He had no patience for tall tales about ghosts or monsters. But there was this one night that he never talked about without a bottle of whiskey in his hand. It was early spring. Snow still clung to the coulees, and the nights were bitter cold. Bill was woken just past midnight by the sound of his dogs, 3 shepherd mixes, barking their throats raw in the yard. It wasn't their usual coyote bark either. This one was different, frantic, terrified. Bill pulled on his boots, grabbed his rifle, and stepped outside. The barking stopped the second that the door was cracked open. Dead silence fell over the ranch yard. He whistled for the dogs, but instead of charging towards him, they huddled together under the porch, tails between their legs, eyes wide and fixed on the darkness near the barn. Bill raised his lantern. At first, he saw nothing, just the long, black field stretching out to the tree line. Then something moved. It slid through the grass, low and fast, too big for a coyote, too heavy for a dog. The lantern light caught its shape just enough for Bill to see the hunched back, the long legs bent at strange angles, the shaggy black fur, and then its eyes, red, glowing like coals in the dark, watching him. Bill froze. For a moment, he thought it was a trick of the light, until the creature let out the sound that he swore no living animal could make. It wasn't a growl, it wasn't a howl, it was a scream that started deep in its chest and rose higher and higher until it twisted into something like laughter, wet, broken laughter that echoed across the fields. Bill's blood turned cold. The dogs whimpered and pressed tighter under the porch. Bill lifted his rifle and fired. The shot cracked through the night, the muzzle flash lighting up the yard. But when the sound faded, the creature was still there, crouched at the edge of the barn's shadow, unmoving. Then, slowly, it began to circle. Not charging, not retreating, just pacing. Just outside the glow of the lantern. Bill fired again. Nothing. He couldn't even tell if the bullets were hitting it. The circling stopped. For a long moment, the thing just stared at him. Bill said it felt like it was studying him, like it knew he couldn't touch it. Then he slipped back into the darkness, swallowed by the night, as if it had never been there. Bill barely slept that night. At sunrise, he grabbed his rifle again and went to look for tracks, and he found them. Prints in the mud behind the barn, too long, too narrow, with twisted claws that dug deep into the earth. They led straight to the barn door, but not a single track led away. The dogs refused to leave the porch for 3 days. Not long after, Bill sold the ranch. He told people that it was the markets or the winters, or that he was tired of the work, but he never forgot the look in those red eyes. He felt a twinge of guilt when a young family of 4 moved in, with beautiful white Pyrenees dog bounding happily across the yard. A few weeks later, Bill heard through a neighbor that the dog had vanished. No tracks, no blood, no sign of a struggle, just gone. Bill never went back to visit, and he never regretted selling. But every time he thought about that ranch, he could still hear that twisted, high-pitched laugh echoing across the fields, and he knew whatever had circled him that night was still out there watching and waiting. Dun, dun, dun!
I should have done this ahead of time because some of these we can have visuals. But on my computer, you will find the ringdookus.
Oh my gosh.
Isn't that gross?
So everybody needs to Google this. That is not a coyote. I have seen enough coyotes to know that that is not a coyote. Or excuse
So
me, coyote, as you guys call them up here.
Oh, Bill,
Oh, Bill.
lay off the whiskey.
Bill's been drinking too much.
Okay, I guess that is quite creepy.
It is super creepy, and it's actually all around Montana. They're apparently super prevalent in the Rocky Mountains. You hear a lot more about them. I don't like it.
Dislike that very much.
Maybe Bigfoot out in the Bear Paws is gonna keep us safe.
Yeah, maybe so. Maybe so.
Bigfoot makes me feel more comfortable than whatever this creature is.
100%.
Oh, and attacks
Ew.
dogs?
Yeah,
I
that's
know.
terrible.
Yeah.
Oh,
My dogs did nothing to you.
and Julia's dogs are tiny.
And deaf.
Oh no.
All right. That one scare you?
Okay, I mean, no, not as much.
Hey, just like the deer, it'll be coming into town.
Yeah. Oh no, that's not good. Maybe it'll help with the deer population. Maybe it'll snatch deer instead.
We don't need a one that carries off dogs. We need one that carries off deer.
Yes. Yes.
Oh, golly.
Okay, I'm ready,
All
Sarah.
right. We're going to go east. Are you ready for this?
Oh gosh. Okay, yes.
16 miles south of Chinook, Montana, the prairie stretches wide and unbroken. The land rolls gently, covered in grass that whispers in the wind. Out here, there are no cities, no highways roaring in the distance, just open sky, quiet earth, and one of the most solemn places in Montana, the Bear Paw Battlefield. Today, it's part of the Nez Perce National Historic Park. There's a walking trail, a few interpretive signs, and a handful of memorial markers. But almost 150 years ago, this was the final stand of the Nez Perce people in the War of 1877. The Nez Perce, who called themselves Nimipu people, had been on the move for months. Refusing to sign away their homeland, they fled across Idaho, Yellowstone, and Montana, pursued at every turn by U.S. Army forces. Their goal was simple: to reach safety in Canada, to cross the border and live free. By late September, they had traveled more than 1,000 miles. Families, children, elders, warriors, hundreds of people in desperate flight. On September 29th, they stopped here at the Bear Paw Mountains. The streams ran with cold water. The prairie held game for hunting. And Canada was just 40 miles farther north. For the first time in weeks, they allowed themselves to rest. But the U.S. Army had not given up the chase. Reinforcements under Colonel Nelson Miles caught up to them on September 30th. The soldiers struck hard, with cavalry charges, rifle fire, and artillery. The Nez Perce scrambled to defend themselves, to shield their families, to hold the horses that were their last chance at escape. Chiefs Ollicott, Joseph's brother, and Lean Elk were killed in the opening clashes. Chief Looking Glass would fall before the siege was over. For days, the battle dragged on. Snow fell. The cold crept into tents and bedrolls. Ammunition ran low, supplies dwindled, and the wounded piled up on both sides. The Nez Perce dug rifle pits into the frozen ground, holding off the soldiers as best they could. Between skirmishes, there was moments of negotiation, fragile truces to gather the dead, to care for the injured, to plead for mercy. By October 5th, the Nez Perce could endure no more. Exhausted, starving, surrounded, they laid down their arms. It was then that Chief Joseph gave his famous words that have echoed through history. From where the sun now stands, I will fight no more forever. More than 400 Nez Perce surrendered that day. Their dream of reaching Canada had ended, just 40 miles short of freedom. The aftermath was as bitter as the battlefield itself. Many of the Nez Perce were sent far from their homelands, confined to reservations they had not chosen. Disease and exposure claimed more lives in the months that followed, and the promises made to them, promises of fair treatment in return, were often broken. Today, the Bear Paw battlefield is quiet, but it carries the weight of that tragedy. Visitors often describe the site as haunting, not in the sense of ghosts rising from the ground or voices echoing in the night, though burials and mass graves lend themselves to such imaginings. Instead, the haunting here is emotional. Standing in the wind-swept prairie, with only the sound of the grass bending, people say they feel a heaviness, a sadness, a presence of all that was lost. The markers along the trail tell the story, but it's the silence that's loudest. You can walk the same ridges where soldiers advanced, the same low ground as Perce families huddled in dugouts, praying for survival. You can look north toward the invisible border with Canada and imagine what it meant to be so close and yet so far. There is, however, one story that locals sometimes share, quietly, and always with respect. A visitor once recalled being by the gates near dusk, when the sun was dropping low and the prairie grass glowed gold in the fading light. He lingered a moment at the trailhead, listening to the wind. That's when he heard it, a faint, steady beat of drums, carrying across the open ground. Not loud, not close, just enough to raise the hair on his arms. He walked the path to investigate, but the field was empty. The sound faded as he went, replaced by whispers, words he couldn't quite understand, voices on the edge of hearing. When he turned back around, he caught sight of movement, a small group of figures on horseback, silhouetted against the horizon. He said they were there for only a heartbeat, then gone, swallowed by the tall grass and the sinking sun. The man never claimed it was a ghost story. He told it instead as a reminder that the land remembers, that the people who passed here left something behind, more than markers or history books could capture. The Blaine County Museum in Chinook keeps that memory alive with an exhibit called 40 Miles from Freedom. The words themselves cut deep. Freedom was close enough to touch, and yet it slipped away. While some battlefields around the world are famous for ghost stories, apparitions of soldiers, phantom gunfire, the Bear Paw battlefield is different. Here, the haunting is not about shadows in the dark. It is about memory, about loss, about what should have been. If you go there, you may not see spirits, but you will feel something. The land holds the memory of that long, hard fight, of the lives lost, of the surrender that changed a people forever. It is a reminder, carved not in stone, but in soil and sky, that history lingers, and some places are haunted by sorrow itself. That didn't scare you, it just made you sad.
That's right. The Bear Paw battlefield is a horrific story, and it does make you sad. So I'll believe this one.
I think it's, I guess personally with my beliefs, I feel like what people may think of as, ghosts could be just lingering energy. And I think that for sure the Bear Paw battlefield is that lingering energy. I feel like with so much sorrow and sadness and probably a bit of anger, um, it has to linger. Where else is it gonna go?
Chilling memory.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the land remembers. Oh, so sad.
And I've been to other battlefields, like mostly Civil War battlefields just from where I grew up.
Yeah.
And they do have a similar energy, but I mean this one is different just because of the story behind it and everything.
Yeah.
And
They were so close.
yeah. Ooh.
Yeah, breaks my heart. Absolutely horrifying.
All right.
Well,
Make us
now
happy and scare us again.
well, now I feel bad. We have another theater haunting.
Oh, no.
I gave all the theater. Well, no, I guess I had the one theater,
Yeah, you
but
had the
yeah.
theater. This is the haunting of the Fort Peck Theater.
Oh, okay. I have heard this one too.
The Fort Peck Theater isn't just one of Montana's most beautiful historic landmarks, it's also one of the most haunted. Built in the 1930s for the workers of the Fort Peck Dam, the theater has seen thousands of performances, films, and community events. But some say when the lights go down and the seats are empty, not everyone has left. Actors and stagehands whisper about strange footsteps echoing across the balcony when no one is there. Costumes have been found moved or rearranged overnight, and props go missing only to appear in the exact spot where they were before. One actress tells of being backstage late one evening, running lines alone, when she suddenly felt a chill sweep across the room. Then out of the corner of her eye, she saw a figure, a man in old-fashioned clothing, standing just beyond the stage lights. When she turned, he was gone, leaving only the soft creak of the floorboards where he'd stood. Others say they've seen a woman in a long dress gliding through the aisles during rehearsals, silent and watchful. And more than one custodian has refused to work in the theater alone after hearing laughter and voices in the rafters long after everyone else has gone home. Some believe these are the spirits of the dam workers who first filled the seats in the 1930s. Others think they're restless souls of performers who loved the stage so much they never left. But one thing is certain, in the Fort Peck Theater, the show never really ends. Even when the curtain falls and the doors are locked, the ghosts still linger, waiting for the next act. Lisa had never believed in ghosts. Some would say Steph never believed in ghosts. She'd grown up hearing of hauntings from her friends and her family, but she always laughed them off. Drafty old buildings creak, lights flicker, and people let their imaginations run wild. The world is hard enough without adding supernatural things to it.
That's right, Lisa.
Just wait. After her junior year of college, Lisa got the opportunity to intern at the Fort Peck Theater. This was going to be a huge opportunity for her as she had her sights set on working in a big theater company one day. She was never one for the stage, but she loved the background work that made the shows possible. One evening, near the end of her summer internship, rehearsal had run late. By the time that the rest of the cast filtered out, Lisa stayed behind to tidy up the costumes and the props. She liked the quiet, and she didn't mind locking up. The theater, built back in the 1930s, was beautiful, even in the dim glow of the exit signs. She gathered up costumes, stacked a few props, and was about to turn off the lights when she heard it. Footsteps. They came from the balcony above her, slow, steady, like someone was pacing. Lisa froze. She knew she was the only one left in the building. She called out, "Hello? Is someone still here?" No answer. Just the sound of footsteps crossing from one side of the balcony to the other. Lisa frowned and climbed the stairs. Probably just one of the guys playing a joke, she muttered to herself. But when she reached the balcony, the rows of seats were empty. The air felt colder up there, heavy somehow. Then, without warning, she felt something brush past her face, cold, sharp, like walking into an icy draft. Her heart began to hammer, and she forced herself to laugh. "Old building," she whispered, "just old building." She turned to head down, then she saw him. Below stood a man in an old-fashioned suit, his outline faint as if lit by a flickering candle. He didn't move, didn't speak, just stood there staring up at her. His face was pale, almost featureless, but she felt his eyes on her. Lisa's breath caught in her throat. She blinked hard. The figure was gone. The stage stood empty, silent as ever. That was enough. Lisa bolted down the stairs through the stage door and out into the night air. Her hands shook so badly she dropped her keys trying to unlock her car. She never went back. Not to another rehearsal, not to another performance. She told the theater that she had a family emergency and had to go back home. But when her family and friends pressed her for answers, she finally admitted what happened that night. And she said the same thing every time. I don't believe in ghosts, but I'm never stepping foot in that theater again.
That one's creepy. The story I heard was the hotel in Fort Peck.
Yes, that
Oh,
is all
yikes.
all
Okay.
haunted.
Yikes.
A lot of history.
Oh. Sorry, Fort Peck. I'm not visiting anytime soon.
It might be fun. You didn't get a chance to meet Oscar. Maybe you'll get a chance
Yeah.
to meet fine gentlemen.
Yeah, I mean, maybe he just wants to be friends. He doesn't seem malevolent, just, he just wants to look at you. He's just a kid. He's like, you did not put those props away correctly. Try again.
All right, are you ready for our last story?
Okay, I'm ready.
It is another cryptid. And I'm not going to lie, this one gave me the straight up heebie-jeebies.
Oh no.
I don't know what you're going to,
Oh,
I know what you're going to tell us about, but I don't know the story and I don't like this cryptid.
Yeah.
I do not like this cryptid.
It also has another visual that I'm going to make you look at through the duration of this story.
oh great. Okay.
When anybody Googles this, I think they're going to have a similar reaction as what I anticipate you are right now.
Oh. Oh.
She dislikes this very much.
Don't like it.
All right.
He's like a mix of everything in Montana. All the critters.
Yeah, it kind of is.
All right, are you ready? The Wendigo is a spirit found throughout the traditions of Algonquin-speaking peoples. Among them, the Ojibwe and the Cree, who are the ancestors of today's Chippewa Cree tribe at Rocky Boys Reservation. It's not your average ghost story. The Wendigo is a supernatural being tied to winter, famine, and greed. In some traditions, it appears as a gaunt skeletal figure, towering and hollow-eyed, with teeth like knives and a heart made of ice. In other versions, it's not a monster you can see at all, but a malevolent spirit, an evil manito, that slips inside a person and begins to possess them. Those who are touched by it become restless, withdrawn, and endlessly hungry until, in the darkest tales, they turn against their own families and communities. The Wendigo hunts patiently. Some stories say you'll first feel it in the woods as a prickling unease, the sense that you're being followed. Then comes the sounds, branches snapping where nothing should be, rocks tossed just out of sight. It toys with its prey, wearing them down with fear and exhaustion. And if you hear your own name whispered in the darkness, you must never answer. The Wendigo is said to mimic human voices, even the cries of loved ones, to draw you closer. The danger isn't just outside. For generations, there have been stories of Wendigo psychosis, when isolation and starvation drove people into despair. First came depression, then paranoia, and finally, a craving for human flesh. One of the most infamous cases was Swift Runner, a Cree man in 1879 who killed and ate his family during a bitter winter. He claimed the Wendigo spirit had taken hold of him. His story still chills anyone who hears it. Among the Chippewa Cree, the Wendigo tale was more than a fright. It was a warning. In times of famine, people had to rely on one another to survive. The Wendigo reminded them that selfishness, greed, and breaking taboos could destroy the whole community. To give in to hunger and consume what must never be consumed meant losing not just your humanity, but your soul. And when the Chippewa Cree came west to Montana, they carried these teachings with them. Some say the Wendigo followed, stalking their journey across the plains. Others whispered that it was already here, waiting in the Bear Paw Mountains, an ancient hunger hidden in the rocky coulees. Even now, stories drift through the Highlines. Hunters seek massive tracks in the snow, too wide for deer, too deep for an elk, ending abruptly in the middle of the woods, as though whatever made them had simply dissolved into the air. Campers remember nights when the forest grew so silent it seemed the world itself was holding its breath until the crunch of slow, deliberate footsteps circled just beyond the firelight. There's one tale still told quietly, as if saying it too loudly might call the spirit down. A man once wandered too deep into the Bear Paws during a brutal winter storm. When he returned, he wasn't the same. His eyes were hollow, his appetite endless, his voice barely his own. The elders whispered he had been marked by the Wendigo, that a shard of his icy heart now beat inside him. One winter in the 1970s, a ranch hand from Box Elder was caught in a sudden blizzard while checking cattle near the timberline of the Bear Paws. When he finally staggered back to the bunkhouse, frost clinging to his coat, the others said he looked half dead. He sat by the stove, staring into the flames, and whispered that something had followed him. At first, he thought it was just the storm, trees groaning, snow shifting in the drifts, but then he heard it. Heavy steps crunching in rhythm with his own, always just behind, never catching up. He called out, thinking it might be another rancher. Instead, a voice called his name from the whiteout, sounding exactly like his brother's. But his brother was hundreds of miles away. Panic took hold. He pushed harder through the snow, but the footsteps grew louder, closer, until he swore he felt warm breath at the back of his neck and the freezing wind. When he turned, there was nothing, only the faint outline of an enormous track stretching back into the storm, wider than any man's, deeper than any elk's, and ending abruptly as though the marker had simply vanished. The ranch hand survived, but those who knew him said he was never the same. He grew gaunt, restless, unable to eat enough to be satisfied. Sometimes when the night turned long and bitter cold, they swore they heard him pacing outside, long after the cattle were bedded down. Marked by the Wendigo, the elders said. That is the most terrifying thing about the Wendigo. It is not always a monster you see stalking the woods. Sometimes it takes root inside of us, in the hunger that can't be filled, the greed that knows no limit, the choices we make when fear and selfishness outweigh community and compassion. So imagine yourself on a snowbound night in the Bear Paws. The trees groan under the weight of ice, and the air is so still you can hear your heartbeat. Then the silence deepens. No owls, no deer, no wind. From the shadows comes the sounds of footsteps, heavy, steady, far too deliberate to be anything you know. If you hear them, don't look back, because once the Wendigo knows you've seen it, it will never stop hungering for you. The Wendigo is more than a monster. It is a reminder of what happens when balance breaks, when need curls into greed, when hunger turns to violence. But in the long shadows of Bear Paw Mountains, with snow falling thick and silence pressing in, it's hard not to wonder if the spirit itself still walks there, waiting for someone to stray too far from the firelight.
That is so scary. That needs to be made into a movie. If I was a person that liked scary movies, that would be a movie to
I
watch. Yikes.
hate stories about Wendigos or Wendigos, however people like to say it. It was funny because the day that we were deciding what stories we wanted to tell, we literally listened to a podcast. I think it was the Heart Starts Pounding podcast because I love horror podcasts. I know. They were literally talking about the Wendigo and the Green Man and other stories as well about Wendigos and how he woke up one morning wanting to eat his children
Oh
and,
my
like,
gosh.
run out of the house.
And they're not, the legend of this is not isolated to Montana. Like I mentioned, they say that it traveled with uh, the Warak'in, or it was still here, already here. Like there are stories of this from all over. Um, I lived in Knoxville, Tennessee for like a year or so when I was in my early 20s. And out in Appalachia, it's very
Nope,
similar to the skinwalkers
nope,
that you hear about.
they are scary skinwalkers.
Yeah, thankfully I lived in the city, but, like, I've spent some time out in the boonies in Appalachia, and she creepy.
You couldn't pay me enough to go to Appalachia. You couldn't.
It's beautiful,
Nope, don't care.
but she creepy.
Nope.
Well, the one relevant to our area, I'm thinking, people that have experienced the worst winters in Montana have been in our area. and that would drive a person to go absolutely crazy. So maybe it's just the cold weather. There's my skepticism.
You
Nope.
tell yourself
That's
you need
that's what's gonna make me sleep tonight.
No, it's this beautiful creature on my computer screen.
Oh, no.
every winter, when because it's like it doesn't get completely dark in the winter time, and so when I inevitably have to get up to use the restroom in the middle of the night or at 3 a.m., it's always 3 a.m., and I, like, look outside and it's all purple outside, I fully expect to see
Oh
this
my
monster. Like, that is
gosh.
what is in my brain. I'm just like, "It's gonna be looking in my window."
Imagine me. I live in Rudyard.
No, thank you.
There's like nobody behind me.
No, thank you.
It's super quiet. All you can hear is the train every now and then. And yeah, no.
Mm.
So like putting this one together scared me.
You guys have
Yeah.
ruined the silence of winter for me. No.
Steph was looking forward to Christmas, and now it's over.
Yeah.
I love how we are recording this at the end of the day. So hopefully this lingers with you to bedtime. And you're just
Oh. Watch some rom-coms tonight.
I'm 1,000% going home just to listen to more horror stories.
I will not be. Oh,
Oh my
well,
goodness.
that wraps up our haunted Highline stories for you today. So whether you're a believer in ghosts or a skeptic like Stephanie, we hope you enjoyed getting a little spooked with us.
A big thank you, Steph, for being such a good sport and for letting us try our best to creep you out.
I would say anytime, but no thanks.
But that would be a lie. And thank you to all of our listeners for tuning in to Bear With Us. Again, we're the podcast from Bear Paw Development, where we highlight the people, places, and projects that make North Central Montana so special. And in instances like today, the spooky
Ooh,
things.
spooky. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss our upcoming episodes. We're going to continue to go down this spooky story podcast line here. So if you enjoyed this one, share it with a friend who loves a good ghost story. And as always, thank you for bearing with us. Bye.